When we first saw 33 Immortals shown off at Xbox's Game Showcase in 2023, I certainly thought it looked cool, but it felt more like a proof of concept. The kind of late night conversation between two devs that started off with, hey, what if we did a top-down action roguelite, but with 33 player co-op? The potential is you get the intense high of executing a raid-like experience, but that's just the entire game. The problem is, how do you get 33 people to work together and make it feel meaningful enough that you can achieve it? Well, Gabe and I have played about 5 hours worth of 33 Immortals in its open beta, and friends, we got good news. They may have just pulled this one off. No! Dang it.
You got stuck in the mosh pit, bro.
I just got way too surrounded.
Oh my god, I can't.
I gave it everything I had. Okay, before I get into the why, let's talk about the what. Like I said at the top, 33 Immortals is a top-down action roguelite that you play in up to 33 player co-op. You play as a damned soul and you're rebelling against the gods to try and escape purgatory. To do that, you need to enter the Inferno, defeat Lucifer, get a key to Purgatorio, rinse and repeat. You don't actually complete this all in one run, you do each as a single instance, and I'll talk about that unique concept towards the end. So when you enter one of the worlds, you don't need to already have a set up lobby of 33 people. You play in a squad of 3, and when you enter a world, you're either joining an instance that's already made a little bit of progress, or is fresh and you'll have people join you in the first few minutes until you reach 33 players. You're set on a map that always has a slightly different layout, but the same goal. Complete 12 chambers, which lead to an ascension battle, where you have to outlast massive hordes of enemies, and then you can take on the boss. On top of that, the world is littered with things to do and upgrades to work towards during your run, while you wait for the chambers to open. For example, as you defeat enemies, this purple container in the bottom right corner fills up, which allows you to upgrade one of 3 key stats: health, attack, and empathy. Health and attack I don't really need to explain, but empathy is essentially your co-op power. Yes, this game has co-op power, and I love it for that, but let me come back to it in a minute. So you're going throughout the world upgrading your character for the run with stat boosts or relic drops you can find in chests. Relics do things like increase your damage or let you damage for your dodge. Then you enter the chambers whenever they open. You can go in with a group of up to 6, and then you continue that cycle until the end. The big emphasis, of course, is working together through all of this. You wouldn't ever want to enter a chamber alone, you'd quickly get overrun, so you do want to be smart about it and wait for another group of people to show up. You also don't want your numbers to dwindle. Each player only has 1 revive available during a run, and you always see the player count in the top right corner, so you want to be as high as possible with the players going into the boss. This is just one part of how the game drives home cooperative play. Okay, so outside of runs, you have permanent perks you can find during the runs, and then you can equip them before a run with the NPC Dante, and they do things like give you more health from healing shrines or higher base stats at the beginning of a run. You can also choose between 4 weapons, which determine your playstyle. Each weapon has a co-op ability you can activate after building up that forces you and a teammate or 2 to stand on a rune that activates either an attack, or a shield, or a buff, depending on the weapon. This is where that empathy stat comes in that I mentioned earlier. The higher your empathy, the better your co-op abilities play out. Like if you use the big sword, you have the shield ability you can give to you and your teammates, and the higher empathy each player has, the stronger the shield. Again, another really cool way the game drives home cooperative play. Now, before I already start talking about my impressions, I'm kind of hinting at them, let's summarize the gameplay loop. You play the game through runs that consist of 33 players, but you're in a squad of 3. You complete chambers, which then lead to an ascension battle, and then that leads to the boss, and all the while you're trying to upgrade your character as much as possible to improve your chance of success. And then it's back to the hub where you can upgrade your perks, or eventually your weapon, to try and get stronger for the next run, hence it being a roguelite and not a roguelike. If you do complete a run, you receive consumable keys that let you try the next level. That's 33 Immortals in a nutshell. Now let me give you my actual impressions. So if the goal was to give you the high of a raid, but on a much more consistent basis, 33 Immortals is already hitting its mark. I mentioned some of those co-op mechanics already, but let's talk about them again with a little bit more detail. The game is constantly reminding you that you need to stick together. It's literally even in the loading screens. Like I said before, if you try to go into a chamber with less than 6 people, or go off on your own on the map, you're probably going to get overrun. The enemy diversity is really strong. You've got smaller, speedier enemies that are hard for ranged players to handle, slower, lumbering brutes that are tough for close range players, and ranged enemies that are tough for tanky players. And there's always a lot of them. Plus, if you go down, you can be revived once, but at half health, and the next time you're out for the run. So you cannot by any means brute force your way through a scenario, and you're always very aware of your lobby's numbers in that top right corner. It's a small thing, but having that player count always available, and it shows if someone needs to be revived, makes you feel a responsibility over your teammates. In addition, the game has easy access to emotes to communicate with everyone, and you can always see where other players are on the map, plus you can teleport to any player on the map if you purchase a teleportation stone. So while you may not have comms with the entire lobby, the emotes actually make a big difference in trying to get players to group up on the map. Of course, you do have comms with your squad of 3, which is where you'll do a lot of coordination mid-fight to take advantage of those co-op powers I mentioned earlier. In the middle of a chamber, we were consistently calling out locations to make sure we utilize each other's buffs and shields whenever they came up. And again, there are other small ways the game pushes you to stick together. For instance, the only way to regain health is by spending skulls, which is your in-run currency, next to the chamber gates, but if you stand by someone when they activate it, then you all receive some heal. So this cool thing would happen where everyone is always gathering together by the skulls to make sure they heal up, and we often sent out a little emote to remind people to come and take advantage. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is the boss. I notably left it out until now. Granted, Gabe and I have only taken down the first boss, Lucifer, but we walked away very impressed. The first boss has just enough mechanics where you do need to play towards its phases and moves as a group, but not too much that it feels frustrating to coordinate. For example, he'll sometimes summon large blue mini-bosses that you need to take down in time to save a party wipe, or he'll send out smaller crystals that are really beefy unless you knock them out with other players. We actually played through this boss fight with one of our Discord members, shout out to Olarion, and he shepherded us through the mechanics, which was really cool. He was giving us directions on how we needed to take out this to prevent this from happening, and it's best to stand here to time with this. It really helped to bring all the mechanics to life. It's like, okay, you can do this really cool thing where you zoom out and see more of the battlefield and can check where your teammates are at and try to hook up mid-fight for a co-op ability, so coordinating that between the 3 of us to grab a bubble mid-boss fight, that was just so awesome. And I gotta say, despite everything happening, the game has excellent readability so you can move out of the way of attacks and not get overwhelmed. It wasn't overly difficult as the first raid boss, but felt pitch perfect in showing that yes, the game can deliver that feeling with 33 people when it needs to and fully justifies the proof of concept. Finishing a run knowing you made it through with your group of 15 despite starting off with 33 does something weirdly special, and I'll be chasing that high until release.
We're gonna take out some of these mini bosses. One's almost dead. Oh, what?
We do it? They got it actually. Yeah, we did it.
No way.
I can't believe we did it.
Yeah, first time.
No way.
Yeah, we're heroes.
We're legends.
With all that said, it goes without saying that I'm feeling good about what 33 Immortals is trying to do. Sure, it's only a few hours, so I encourage you to wait until release and some full reviews to make a purchase or a pre-order. But I really trust what the team is doing. It genuinely feels like they understand what it's going to take to make this concept work. Here's my last example. Remember how I said you play one level at a time? So after you beat a boss, you receive several consumable keys that let you access the next area. For example, I received 3 keys after beating Lucifer. Notably, the next area, Purgatorio, only requires 22 players, and the third area only requires 11 players. I think that's really smart in 2 ways. Obviously, you're going to have fewer players in higher areas, so decrease the player count. But even smarter is making those keys consumable. You'll never permanently unlock the higher areas, so that the first world that requires 33 players always has a strong player base to pull from. I'd argue the biggest issue this game would face is having enough people to always populate a run, but with moves like that I just mentioned, and launching on Game Pass, I think they found some smart solutions. We don't know when 33 Immortals is going to launch yet. I have a hunch we're going to find out real soon at Summer Games Fest, but either way, it's going to be a day 1 play for the bros. Okay guys, as always, thanks for watching. I hope this preview helped you get a good idea of what 33 Immortals is and could potentially be. Be sure to stick around to the channel by subscribing. We may have another preview dropping in the next week, hint hint. Shout out to our patrons too. We haven't forgotten about you all. We have been playing through RoboQuest on the side, and we'll have a dedicated review sometime in the next month. Our patrons voted on that as our backlog game, and we intend to see it through It's so far a pretty good time. Until next time though, we'll catch you on another episode of the Co-op Bros.